In fact, when you ask the question, what justifies my existence, the answer is life. So let's start with the good news. Mashiach is coming. You've heard that before. Many, many times. But really, the internet is designed and created for Mashiach. No question about it. Because the reach and the access that this affords us is just unbelievable. So on YouTube, I would say that probably the majority of viewers are non-Jewish and from every country in the world. We had one very inspiring incident. There was this guy from someplace in Africa. He calls and he can barely speak English. But he managed to say, "You're the light to the nations. Why aren't you here? We need you because we need to learn Torah." I was like, this is the prophecy that in the days before the coming of Mashiach, the non-Jewish world will come to the Jews and say, "You're supposed to be our teachers. Teach us. We're ready to learn." There was one man in New Guinea. You know New Guinea? It's a third world country. He happens to live in the jungles of New Guinea. It takes him 8 hours of walking to get to the nearest connection to the internet. He does it once a week. 8 hours one way. And then he goes back to his village and he repeats what he learned, and everybody sits there and listens. And so when he told the story online, all the other people who were there online immediately offered to buy him a bicycle. He says, "The roads I walk, you cannot drive a bicycle." So he has to walk. Now, obviously, you can't walk 8 hours without a stop. So he stops. He rests. So it turns out to be 11 hours. Can you imagine this? To walk 11 hours to hear one idea from Torah, from Judaism, in order to take it back to your village. And this is amazing. And that's the internet. Without the internet, this could not happen. And the prophecy is being fulfilled. The prophet said that in the end of days, the nations will come to the Jews and say, "Beis Yaakov, l'chu v'nelcha, lead the way and we will follow in the path of Hashem." And they're actually saying it in literally those words. You are the light to the nations. Well, teach us. Now, concerning the book, if you've seen it or if you've read anything about the book, it was written by a woman in Florida whose name is Rivka Goldstein. Rivka Goldstein. But wait till you see her. She is Chinese. And she lived for many years in Singapore, where she converted and ran a kosher home. And all the rabbis who would come visit Singapore would eat at her home. She has one little boy, and she was very concerned about how do you raise a child properly. There must be a manual. There's got to be some instructions. How do you raise a Jewish child? So when she heard the lectures online on YouTube, she decided to put it all together and create a book. She worked on it for 3 years, like full time. And she is convinced that she created a manual. So to her, that's what the book is all about. The main ideas of life as a Jew in a way that she could share it with her children. A manual for raising a Jewish child. Her husband, on the other hand, thinks that it's a collection of ideas, like an anthology. So it's a reference book. So she calls it a manual, he calls it a reference book. One of the main ideas, which you may have already heard, but it's worth thinking about, is the distinction between living and existing. And this is the main topic for today. There are people who wake up to a life, and there are people who wake up to an existence, and they're not the same at all. The basic difference is existence means occupying space. That's what it means to exist. If you're sitting in a chair and someone else can sit there as well, then you don't exist. Because existence means occupying your space. A book on the shelf, if you can put another book in the same spot, that book doesn't exist. Because if it doesn't take up space, then it's not a physical object and it does not exist in the physical world. Everything that exists takes up space. Everything. Air takes up space. Fire takes up space. A thought in your head takes up space, which is why you can't think two thoughts at the same time. A feeling in the heart takes up space. So when you're having an emotion, the expression is, the heart is full. So everything that exists in this world takes up space. In addition, in order to exist and continue to take up space, you need certain resources. You have to eat. Otherwise, you'll stop taking up space. You'll get really skinny. You got to drink. You got to sleep. You need a house. You need friends. You need a support system. You need emotional support. You need education. It just goes on and on and on. And when you have all of those needs, what have you accomplished? You can take up space. Or you can do it again tomorrow. So, to some degree, the very existence of a human being is a little depressing. That's it, you take up space. Not something to be proud of. And not only do I take up space, I use up resources so that I can take up space. Now, that's embarrassing to a human being. So all of our needs, all of our troubles, all of our heaviness comes from the fact that we exist. Life, on the other hand, is very different. Life means the effect and the contribution that you make while you exist in this world. Life doesn't have any demands. You don't need to eat in order to live. You need to eat in order to exist. But life means the effect or the contribution that you are making as you go about your existence. speaking to a group of inmates at a federal penitentiary. These are people who committed some pretty heinous crimes, and they've been in jail 30, 40 years. And when they heard this distinction between existing and living, they came to a very useful, helpful, life-supporting realization. Prison can only affect your existence. It's not your space. You can't eat when you want, what you want, and where you want. You can't sleep where you want, when you want. So your existence is basically taken away from you. That's what imprisonment means. But life, can you not have a life in prison? Can you not make a difference, make a contribution? Of course you can. And if you do, then you have a worthy life, even though your existence is kind of restricted and pathetic. The biggest blessing of the whole thing was one of these people who took the course were, I think 32 years he was in prison, and now he's being released. And he says, learning this distinction, I am no longer afraid of the outside world. After 32 years, you don't want to be released. Because you came with nothing, you leave with nothing. It's scary. But this guy says, I'm leaving on a mission. I'm going to go out there and tell the world that there's a difference between existing and living, and encourage people to get a life. So he's now looking forward to being released instead of dreading it. So let's take a look at some of the important distinctions and the confusion that happens when we don't recognize how different life is from existing. For example, what is the secret of Jewish survival? How is it that we're still here and other nations that were bigger, stronger, richer are simply gone? Gone, disappeared. The Romans, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, even more recently, the Turkish Empire, the British Empire, the Soviet Union, they're all gone. They were very powerful. They're gone, but the Jews are still here. As Mark Twain wrote about the Jews, other nations came and made a vast noise, and now they are lost in the backwaters of history. But the Jew is still here, showing no signs of infirmity. In English, that means still making trouble. How is it? What's the secret? The difference is living and existing. The other nations, as rich as they were, as powerful as they were, had only one goal: to exist, to continue existing, to guarantee that they will exist forever and the sun will never set on their empire. So all they did, everything they tried, everything they accomplished was to guarantee their own existence. And they don't exist. But we had a different history. Before we entered the Promised Land, after leaving Egypt, Moshe was not going to go with us. He was going to be buried in the desert. But he left us with a positive thought. He said, let me tell you what lies ahead for you. Nothing but misery. You're going to come to the Promised Land, you're going to settle down, you'll have a couple of good weekends, and then You're going to be thrown out and scattered to the four corners of the earth. You're going to be reduced to a fraction of your number. You're going to live in countries where you're not welcome. You're not going to know today what tomorrow will bring. You're going to go crazy from the insanity of your... And people said, whoa, whoa. What is your point? And Moshe said, the point is, don't look forward to a good existence because it's not going to happen. Your existence is going to be miserable. Existing means taking up space. Well, you're not going to have your own space. Existence means having what to eat, what to drink, and a roof over your head. Maybe sometimes. So what is the point? The point is, if your existence is not going to be exciting, then forget about it and focus on life. Be busy living. And that is the best description of Jewish history. You want to describe Jewish history in one sentence. Jews don't exist very well. True? We don't exist very well, but we are so alive. In fact, when our existence gets down to the worst, lowest, minimal condition, where we barely exist, we are most alive. Even today, ask anybody at the United Nations, is there a Jewish country in the Middle East? Nope, does not exist. But what do they talk about in the UN every day? How much trouble Israel is making. So for a people that don't exist, we're running the world. That's why people are so confused. Can't figure out what's with these Jews. They don't exist, but they're so alive. So what do we see from this? If you focus on your existence, you're going to be drained, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be depressed. If you focus on life, then your existence, whatever it may be, good enough. So it's like a seesaw. The more energy you put into one, the less you have for the other. You put your energy into life, your existence kind of takes care of itself. You put your energy into existing, you have no energy for life. Like a doctor in the time of a plague. How come everybody gets sick and the doctor doesn't? You start to suspect maybe he has a better medicine for himself than he's giving everybody else. What is it that doctors don't get sick? They don't even get tired. You know, sick and tired always come together. They don't get sick and they don't get tired until the plague is over. Then they're in trouble. Basically, what it shows is that when you're really alive, when your contribution is so obvious, so necessary, so urgent, you are so alive that your existence loses its power. So I'll eat tomorrow. I'll sleep later. No big deal. I'm alive. I am needed. Same is true when a woman gets pregnant. Her existence is devastated. Her space is not her own anymore. She can't eat when she wants, what she wants, how she wants. She can't sleep how she wants. Her existence has been completely hijacked. But she's so alive. Another interesting distinction. Why are people always, throughout history, asking the same question, like for 5,000 years? The question, why are we here? What is the purpose of life? Recently, that question has become more urgent. Children are asking it. And it's a little frightening. A 10-year-old says, "No, I'm not going to clean up my room. I didn't ask to be born." You think, "Oh my God, this kid is depressed." But he's not. He's just smart. So if your child ever says to you, "I didn't ask to be born," what should you say? "Neither did I." Who asks to be born? Nobody. But why do we keep asking this question? Why are we here? Do you know of any other place? You want to go someplace else? What are you asking? We've been here for 5,000 years at least. So get used to it. Settle down. What is with this constant questioning? See, here's where we make the mistake. What is the purpose of life? That's wrong. The question is, what is the purpose of existence? That's a good question, because existence is embarrassing. So anybody with a little sensitivity needs to justify existing. I take up space. I clash with everybody. And I need food, and I need money, and I need... Come on, there's got to be something that justifies all this. That's the question. Why are we here? Why are we taking up space? It's not nice. So the question is, how do I justify existence? Life doesn't need to be justified. In fact, when you ask the question, what justifies my existence, the answer is life. If you're making a difference, you're making a contribution, then you're entitled to exist. This is how dangerous it is when we confuse living with existing. Got to get the question right. Take a look at teenagers. It's devastating and sometimes actually dangerous. Every teenager is angry. Why? About what? If you ask them, anywhere in the world, the answer is always the same. You're 16, you're living in your parents' house for free, they give you everything you want if you nudge them long enough. What are you angry about? The answer is always, my mother ruined my whole life. My whole life. It's always your whole life. And it's always the mother. But it's your whole life because teenagers are not good at fractions. So if it's life, it's the whole life. Ruined my whole life. There is some truth to what they're saying. It's just that they confused life with existence. You see, your mother does not ruin your life for two reasons. First of all, as a teenager, you don't have a life. You haven't started to live yet. All you have is an existence, and it's not yours, it's your mother's. So yes, your mother ruins your existence. How did you get to take up space and to exist? Because I carried you for 9 months. Okay, you're right. So mothers, just by nature, ruin your existence. Say you're a very important person, you own the whole town, and you're sitting at a very important meeting, and you're feeling like your existence is huge. and your mother walks in. She doesn't have to say anything or do anything. It's like you are just immediately humbled to the ground. Mr. Big Shot. But life, you got to get a life. Secondly, mothers can't ruin life because life cannot be ruined. Existence can be good or it can be miserable. You can have a huge existence, you can have a painful existence, you can have a minimal existence. Comes in many flavors. Life, there's only one kind of life, and that is sacred. Life is always wonderful. So when people say, I'm having a difficult life, my life is miserable, don't be confused. In fact, what is the definition of depression? What does it mean when you're depressed? I don't mean clinically, hormonally, or just those moods that you're in where you can't wake up in the morning and you can't make a phone call and you don't want to talk to anybody. What happened? Existence is always a little depressing. When you worry about your existence, when you put more energy into your existence, when you're hyper-focused on your existence, you become more depressed. Eventually, your own existence becomes so heavy you can't move. You're buried under the weight of existence. That's depression. And that's why often the solution to that depression is, go do something for someone else. And you feel better. Why? Because now you're alive. We made a big mistake in 1948. We came to the world, the League of Nations at the time, and we said, we have no place. We need a place of our own. We need our own existence. And everybody agreed and said, sure. Take Israel. What happened? Why is it that almost everyone in the world insists that it's our fault that there is no peace in the Middle East? We made a mistake. We said we need Israel because we need a place. No, we need Israel because that's our life, not our place. It's not for our existence, it's for our life. Because if you say, I need a place of my own, everybody agrees. But if somebody else comes along and says, I also need the place, logically, people will say, share. Share your space. Move over a little bit and make room for somebody else. But if you say, this is my life, nobody's going to tell you to compromise your life. And it's probably not too late. We can still come to the world and say, now, Israel is our life. No compromises. You can't have a half-life. Remember Terry Shibo? Yes? Wow. Wow. If you don't know the story, she was in a vegetative state, although she was breathing on her own. But she had to be fed. Her husband, or ex-husband, wanted to stop feeding her so that she would die already. And it became a huge issue in the United States. Every newspaper, Every television show, every conversation was about this issue. What constitutes murder? And the argument was, stop feeding her because the quality of her life is gone. And the Supreme Court decided that that was true, and they stopped feeding her. That was a tragedy. Was the quality of her life gone? Life cannot lose its quality. Sadly, tragically, her existence was devastated. She had no place of her own. She couldn't handle anything on her own. But her life? Was she making a difference? Was she making a contribution? To this day, you remember her. How many people are that lucky? How many years ago was it? More? 30 years later, you mention her name and people say, oh yeah. What, she wasn't having an effect? She had the whole world debating a moral issue. 1,000 rabbis couldn't do that. So the tragedy of confusing her really pitiful existence with the quality of her life. So factually, that was out and out murder. They killed a living person. They starved her to death. That was a tragic thing for the country, not just for her. So the distinction between living and existing is so vital. This is what Shabbos is all about. That's a sudden change, huh? What is Shabbos? On Shabbos, you're not allowed to do anything constructive. If it's not constructive, you can do it. But if it's constructive, no. Doesn't that sound a little backward? It's a holy day, so you can do anything that is not constructive. Should be the opposite. We were on a retreat, the JLI retreat, Shabbos. I forget where it was, but there were some problems with the staircase. The escalator was supposed to stop and become a staircase. Anyway, one of the rabbis who worked at this program ended up on the 12th floor. His room was on the 12th floor. So at the end of a long day, he's finally ready to go to sleep. He's got to climb 12 flights of stairs. He also had a problem with the electronic door to his room. So he asked somebody at the counter, a non-Jewish worker, to meet him at the room to open the door for him. Of course, the worker took the elevator, and the rabbi took the stairs. He finally gets up to the 12th floor, and this man says to him, "What is it about today that you can't open the door?" And the rabbi says, today is our day of rest. So what? Why, if it's constructive, it's forbidden? Like, you can carry your king-size mattress up and down the stairs in your house all day long on Shabbos. Not advised, but you may do it. But turn on the motor, turn on the air conditioner, turn on the oven. No, that's labor. What is that? See, now it makes a lot of sense. 6 days of the week we dedicate to improving our existence. If something is cooked, it's more edible. If it's raw, cook it. If it's hot in the house, turn on the air conditioner. If it's cold in the house, turn on the heater. Make your existence more comfortable. In fact, if there's no heater, invent one. Create one, build one, buy one, deliver one. All of that is existence improvement. And that's okay for 6 days. But on the 7th day, God says to us, enough with the existence, whatever it is. Whatever you prepared, whatever you made, whatever you accomplished during the 6 days, good enough. Be content with your existence, and for one day, focus on life. And here's the bottom line. All my needs come from my existence. Life means I recognize where I'm needed and I can make a difference. That's it. That's the choice in life, to be needy or to be needed. That's everything. That's the whole story. If you focus on your needs, you're headed for a depression. If not you, your children. You will create a wonderful existence. You will give them a wonderful space. You will give them everything they need to exist, and they're going to say, what for? I didn't ask to be born. And then you're going to have to switch and say, no, it's not about existing. It's about living. Again, the difference, existence is needy. Life is to be needed. So Viktor Frankl came up with this on his own, the hard way. In the concentration camp, he discovered those who were needed survived. Those who were focused on their need couldn't handle it because their needs were not provided. So it turns out that a human being by nature, and the Torah told us this right from the start, a human being doesn't need to exist. A human being doesn't need to be loved. A human being doesn't need to be comfortable and rich. A human being needs to be needed. If you're needed, you can handle anything. When you're not needed, nothing makes any sense. So I had this experience. A mother calls me and asks me to visit her 14-year-old son, who was in the psych ward of the county hospital. He and his friend had tried to kill themselves. So they're holding him for observation. But this place, this ward in the hospital is like a prison. It's dangerous. So nobody's allowed to visit. The mother can't visit her son. And he's going to be there for 48 hours. The only ones allowed to visit are clergy with clearance and all sorts of. So she asks me if I would go see her son. I have been there a few times, and it is a really scary place. You have lunatics there. I went to visit the boy. I get off the elevator, double locked doors, like a prison. I get off the elevator just in time to see 4 nurses wrestle a guy to the ground and put him in handcuffs. And everyone is standing around screaming like banshees. The place is crazy. I go off to the kid's room. He's lying there reading something, and he doesn't even look up. I try to start a conversation. He's not interested. How you doing? Your mother asked me to visit you. She's worried about you. What should I tell her? Nothing. Not interested. I keep trying and trying. He's not responding. Finally, he says, why don't you go home? The chaplain has already been here. I said, what did the chaplain say? He says, something stupid. I said, now I'm curious. What did the chaplain say that was stupid? The chaplain said that I shouldn't kill myself because God loves me. I said, that's stupid? He says, yeah. I said, I agree. I can't imagine God loves you. You're obnoxious. He looked up. He looked up and he says, yeah. I said, look, God created you, then he must need you. There is something you can do for him that would complete the puzzle, and without you, that's going to be missing. So he's stuck with you. I don't think he likes you. The boy says, well, what if I don't want to do what he created me for? I said, that's called freedom of choice. You have freedom of choice? So decide, you want to or you don't want to. Take a position, say something. Anyway, it didn't go much further than that. And I'm driving home, and I realize it is so true. What the chaplain said was stupid. The boy tries to kill himself for no particular reason. It's not like his life was miserable. It was an adventure with his friend. They were going to do something daring. Why? Because what difference does it make? By trying to kill himself, he was making a loud statement. I'm not necessary. Yeah, my mother will cry a little bit, but she doesn't need me. I'm not necessary. Now the chaplain comes along and says, oh, don't kill yourself. God loves you. I mean, he was practically saying, you're right. Nobody needs you. But God loves you, so don't kill yourself. And he says, that's stupid. It is stupid for me to continue living so that God can love me when I'm not necessary. And it is stupid of God to love me if I'm not necessary. What are you loving? In simple language, to tell a child, a human being, you're not necessary but you're lovable, is like saying, you're a gerbil. You're a goldfish. Nobody needs you, but you're cute. People love it. Hang around so that God can enjoy loving you. It's not right. So what do we know? A human being needs to be needed far more than we need to be loved. You know, sometimes your child doesn't love you. So what? It's the child's loss, because you know how much the child needs you. So you don't stop being a parent. You don't stop being a mother or a father. The kid says, I hate you. I don't want you to be my mommy. Cute. We need to be needed far more than we need to be loved. Now, take a look at the entire Torah. You're going to see a whole new picture. Does God ever say, I love you? In the Torah, to the Jewish people. In 5 books, does God say, I love you? Maybe once. What is the rest of the Torah? The rest of the Torah is God saying, here's what I need from you. Here's another thing I need from you. 613 things I need from you. And that's the whole story in the Torah. God saying, I needed you to do something, you didn't do it. Why aren't you doing it? I need you to do this. Say, well, do you love me? More than I love you, I need you. And that's what keeps us going. To know that we are needed. We are necessary, indispensable. Every individual. Exactly the way you are. Not if you were different, if you were rich, if you were smart. No, the way you are, you can do something so valuable that it justifies your existence. And when you do it, he might even love you. Never know. But to be needed is so much more important than to be loved. Because the need for love is just a need. How many people are depressed about love? No one loves me. Do you really love me? That's a need. Needs are depressing. But if someone needs you, now you're alive. It is such a simple, obvious truth, but we're so distracted by Hollywood and by modern so-called wisdom. You got to make lunch. It's time to eat lunch. What are you going to do? If you're a man, you'll probably skip it. Too much bother. What am I going to... skip it. Or you open the refrigerator, see if there's any leftovers, a jar, a can of something. It's a burden. But somebody says, can I come over for lunch? All of a sudden, it's a party. Cook up a storm. It is so much more enjoyable to do for someone else than to do for yourself. And yet all the chachamim in the world, all the witch doctors and wise people are telling you, take care of yourself first. You come first. You have to be happy. You have to be healthy. You have to be safe. And we're getting more and more depressed. Now we need a safe space. Because someone said something that might be aggressive. Might be. We're losing it. So all the emphasis on self, on existence, on taking care of yourself, it is so destructive. We're not that kind of creature. We want to be needed, not needy. And that's why we thank God for giving us mitzvahs. Isn't that a little strange? God says, you have to do this on Pesach, and you have to do this on Hanukkah, and you have to do this on Sukkot. And we say, oh, thank you. What is that? Thank you so much for bossing me around. Thank you so much for keeping me busy doing this, that, and the other. We are thanking God for needing us. What do you need from me today? You don't need anything? I'm depressed. So the biggest gift that God gave us is the Torah, because the Torah tells us what He needs, not what we need. So contrary to popular opinion, don't take care of yourself. Don't love yourself more. You love yourself enough. You have enough love to give away. In fact, love was created to give away. Love was never created to love yourself. That's like some guy who's worth $200 billion. And he keeps it under his mattress. You say, what are you doing with all that money? You say, it's mine, I'm keeping it. That's idiotic. You have $200 billion and you're keeping it? That's not what money was created for. That's like talking to yourself. What's wrong with talking to yourself? Speech, communication was not meant for yourself. It's meant to communicate with others. In fact, everything we have is not for ourselves. Nothing. Whatever we have is meant for export. You're capable of love, not to love yourself. You're capable of speech, don't talk to yourself. You have money, don't keep it under your mattress. Start to live. Everything we have, every knowledge we have, every piece of information, not meant to be kept, meant to be shared. And the Rebbe put it very succinctly. If you know an aleph, then teach aleph. And when you learn beis, teach beis. Person who says, well, I'm not finished with my own education yet, why am I going to teach others? You don't wait till you're finished. Every time you learn something, you have something to share. And life is all about sharing. Otherwise, you're just existing. So, what are we teaching our children? You see these kids walking the streets, forming into gangs, looting, stealing, attacking, mugging. What is wrong with these kids? What is wrong with a society that produces such kids? And then you take it's very obvious, you don't need much study. What is the diet? What are the menu that these children are raised with? What do they read? What do they see? What do they do? What are they told? Nothing about life. Nothing. Everything is about existing. They're told how to brush their teeth, how to cross the street safely, how to make it. So what do you expect? They're raised on a diet of violent games and sexual activities, nothing but self-indulgence, and then you're shocked that they misbehave? So even when you tell children, you have to share. Your friend comes over, you have to share your toys, your candy. Sounds good, right? But we ruin it. Share with your friend, because if you don't, then he won't share with you. And he has nicer toys. So you've reduced it back to existence. Study hard, get good marks. Oh, that sounds nice, but then you ruin it. Why should you study hard and get good marks? So that you can get into a good college. Then you'll get a good job. Then you'll get a good salary. And then you'll be able to buy stuff. So we're back to existing again. Don't ever lie. Lying is wrong. Don't lie. Why? Because if you lie, people won't believe you even when you're telling the truth, and then you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. It always gets reduced back to existing. Nothing is just right because it's right. Nothing is valuable because somebody else needs it. So let me end with this. A chassid came to the Alter Rebbe 7 generations ago. And he said, I am, thank God, a very wealthy man. I love giving charity. I love hospitality, offering hospitality. My home is always full. My table is always full with people who need a place to eat, who need some food. So I'm generous all the time, but I'm not sure that I'm sincere. How will I know whether I'm sincere in what I'm doing? The Rebbe said to him, the hungry man who eats at your table enjoys the food sincerely. What more do you want? He is living. He is making a contribution. He's making a difference. He's feeding people. He's taking care of people. But he wants to know, I don't feel like I'm really centered, like my kavanah is 100% sincere. And the Rebbe said to him, what are you doing? What are you doing? When you're giving charity, the only concern is the person receiving. What do you want to get a good feeling, like a glow when you help somebody else? Why are you turning it back on yourself? You finally get past yourself so that you're serving others and taking care of others and doing for others, and you want to turn it back into self-gratification. So what should your pleasure be? Look at that guy eating. It's like he hasn't eaten a week. That's your pleasure. Are you sincere? Who cares? Why is this about you all of a sudden? When we live, we are responding to being needed. If you're needed, your focus is on who needs you. And that's why when you do a mitzvah, you're doing something God needs from you. Are you 100% sincere? Don't do that. Don't kill yourself. You're doing what God needs, and God appreciates it sincerely. What more do you want? A halo? You want a guaranteed seat in heaven? That's not Jewish. One sobering thought. What is the definition of death? What does it mean? Somebody was alive and then he died. It doesn't make any sense. We've gotten used to it, but it doesn't make any sense. Can a dead person come alive? No. But a live person can go dead? Why? How? If you're alive, how can that end? To say life died is an oxymoron. Life can't die, just like death can't live. So you think about it. The soul is alive. It can't die. A living thing can't not live. It's like salt can't go bad. So the soul, because it's alive, cannot die. The body was never really alive. It was just getting its life from the soul. So to say the body died, well, the body was never really alive. So what died? Existence has its limit. You exist for 80, 90, 100 years. You live forever. Only existence can end. Life can't end. Okay, so I don't want to end on the subject of death. We have this terrible, terrible misconception. Terrible. Life is temporary, death is forever. Come on, that's the fact of life. Life is fleeting, it's before you know it, it's over, but death is forever. What a depressing thought. That can't possibly be true. The opposite is true. Life is forever. Every contribution you make, every positive experience you have is forever. Your existence with its demands and with its is not forever. So what does it mean a person passed away? Not taking up space anymore. Now he's completely alive. That is a much more positive and much truer approach to who we are, what we're doing here. We are needed and we thrive. What we need, once in a while we get it. Sometimes we don't. But being needed makes up for it all. So let's go do something we need, and then we can get back to what we're needed for. If you enjoyed this conversation or this topic, and you're looking for more information, or you want to hear it again from another angle, there is a way to do that. And that is in this book. It's all there. Order it from Amazon. You can read it, reread it, and share it. I want to invite you to join us as VIPs, partners in our work, and join us also for a personal chat with other members of the VIP club. We talk about many things. There's an opportunity to ask, to respond, to make a comment, to meet the other supporters. And together we can really make a difference in Jewish life and in life in general. So join us. It's goodtoknow.org. Log in, call, make contact, and join us with the VIPs.